What time is it? It's nation time.
Welcome to the AfterWords program. My name is Baba Kafense Chike. I'm joined by Cardinal and Bayou Chewy, this week's preacher of our sermon, The Beast Within. Welcome to the AfterWords program, Cardinal and Bayou. How are you today? And thank you for a very informative sermon.
I'm great. Glad to be here.
And the scripture from the sermon today comes from Judges, the book of Judges 21, verse 25. You open the sermon by stating that, and you referenced Jeramogi Abebe Ajiman's a quote from Jeramogi. There's this which states, "There's only one authority for Black people, and that is the Black experience, as it is influenced by the never-ending fight for Black freedom, justice, and equality." Could you talk about that a little more, particularly as we find ourselves in a time period where many of us feel like the Black freedom struggle has, it's a passe thing. It's something that is over with.
Well, whether we recognize it or not, we are the product of our experiences, our shared experiences as a group. So no matter what we go through as Black people individually, we might think we moved up or we've been accepted into the mainstream, but we're still part of the Black experience. And no matter how far you try to get away, you're going to be reminded that you belong to a group, right? And that you share the same issues, problems, needs, dreams, passions, ambitions, goals that everybody that's a part of your experience does. So we have one reality, even though we try to pretend like we're disconnected somehow.
And does that disconnectedness somehow tie into this idea of fighting against the beast within?
Yeah, that's where it starts. It starts in our own ego. We think we're better than or above or beyond or special and what have you. So that's where it starts. We convince ourselves in our minds first. That's why Jeramogi Baby always says you got to change Black people's minds first before you can build anything together.
Okay, and in the sermon, you make a strong argument against individualism, capitalism, and materialism, which you express is driving the negative aspects of technology. Considering that these are highly valued attributes, individualism, capitalism, and materialism of the society we live in today, how do these entities operate against our collective welfare, our well-being, and our ability to empower our people?
Well, I think the biggest thing now is that technology has made all of these warped values even more pervasive in our lives, right? You got everything at your fingertips. So you can be a capitalist and never leave your house. You can be a materialistic and never leave your house. And social media has given everybody a platform, every human. So now you've elevated your opinion as the most important thing on the earth. I mean, there are so many, and the biggest thing I think is that it's subtle. We're not even aware how these values are shaping us. And I think collectively they're speeding up human destruction or human self-destruction, because when you put a tool in somebody's hand and then they don't know how to use it or what to use it for, it ultimately becomes a tool of self-destruction. And that's what's happening with this fourth digital revolution, where we have so many ways to be more individualistic and more greedy and more whatever.
So is it safe to say that this technology or the misuse of technology or these individualistic driving forces of technology are actually fighting the beast within?
They're actually perpetuating
I meant to say, I didn't mean to say fighting. I mean feeding the beast within.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So in some
You,
ways, I'm sorry, go ahead.
you hear evidence of that all the time, right? There was a story in the news last week about a 14-year-old and a 17-year-old. 14-year-old girl and her 17-year-old boyfriend. They met online. The mother decided to take the girl's phone. So she got together with her boyfriend and plotted to murder her mother. This just happened last week. She left home early in the morning, and they had this on the news. This was in Detroit. And she left the door open so the boyfriend could go in and kill her mother. He went into the bedroom, tried to smother her with a pillow. She fought him off. She survived. But this is how we're using these tools of technology. And if a young person is so addicted that they would go to this extreme to get their phone back, multiply that by millions of young people who are being addicted at age 4, 5, 6, 7. You can't do nothing without your phone. You can't function without your phone. You can't think without your phone. You can't. Your whole life is in that little piece of plastic and wire.
Could you provide our viewers maybe with one or two examples of the external and internal enemy which you reference in the sermon? So there's this idea of us fighting against the beast within. Could you be a little more specific?
Well, you can't do anything to right the world that we live in, right? To fix the issues and the problems that, are in our environment if you haven't waged any fight on the inside. If you're not fighting against your own weakness, shortcomings, egocentricity, and all the things that are obstacles to your own growth and transformation, then you're not going to be very effective out on the battlefield trying to fight those demons, because they're much bigger, much harder to defeat. So you have to fight on two fronts, always, no matter who you are. We never get to the place where we don't have to keep working on ourselves. As long as you're breathing, you still got some work to do.
Yes.
And the more you do that work, the better prepared you are to handle those collective issues of injustice and inequality and racism and all the things that hold us back.
As I reflect on the words that you open with, referencing the authority, the Black experience, which those words, if I'm not mistaken, were expressed in the 70s or maybe late 60s. And it seems to me they are very applicable today, but we see a heightened external force operating against us. Could you elaborate, or what do you think of that concept?
Well, the problem, I think, is that we don't recognize the source many times of what motivates us. And we have this misnomer, we live in this fog as if we're making our own decisions and choices, but we're the products of the choices and decisions of others. And those who determine our consequences, right? We don't determine our consequences. We don't get to choose the consequence of our reality and our experience. Those things are part of a bigger system. And in order to defeat them, to take control, to take charge of your life, you got to understand the system. And that's something that we don't do. We don't study the enemy system that we're part of and understand how it operates and how it keeps us in this negative cycle of ignorance and poverty and powerlessness. So we have to be more diligent about studying the system and how it works and how the tools and the resources that it uses to keep us in a subservient place.
And I think that as I listen to you talk, that to me helps me better understand the seductive nature of the use of technology and how we may not know that we don't really control so many things that impact our life, but the illusion of my status, me updating what I was doing from 1 minute to the next suggests this idea that I am really in control. And a lot of us don't even understand that we don't even control that whole platform that we're operating in.
It's like being in a maze, right? You're looking for a prize, a treasure at the end of the maze. And so you keep navigating where, and all the time and energy and effort that you're spending trying to find this treasure in is all for naught, because there is no treasure. And if you're getting close to the treasure, it's going to be moved somewhere else. You'll never get there. So
I'm sorry.
the system is set up to keep you in that fog, in that maze, in that spiral. And that's how they can get the most out of you.
Very quickly, if you would, could you tell us how the Best Self movement of the Pan-African Orthodox Christian Church is building a counterculture or value system that creates a worldview of shared values that can unite us as one people operating against this force that's operating against us?
So you create a counterculture by first understanding the enemy system that you're a part of and why those values are self-destructive, and accepting that you need a set of alternative or counterculture values, but you also need a group. You can't do it by yourself. You need an environment where people are all working together. They're going to reinforce this new set of ideas, beliefs, values, and share them in common and make them central to how they live and operate and behave and participate in the world. So that takes a lot of work, a lot of effort. And so we started building a counterculture way back in the 60s, right? And that effort paid dividends because we created that kind of environment and were able to pass those values down to our children and the next generation. So it's a protracted effort. It's, that's why we say it's a protracted struggle. It takes work to build and create the kind of institutional mechanisms people need to live in and to survive in, that share that common set of values. So those two things, you got to have a group and you got to have institutions that are going to reinforce your values.
Thank you very much, Cardinal Chewy, Cardinal Mbayu, for a very informative and moving sermon and an insightful conversation today. We'd like to thank our viewers as well for tuning in and invite you to join us again next week and every week as we present our sermons and have the AfterWords conversation. Afterwards, you have any last closing comments you'd like to leave?
If you want to put a book on your book list that's a must read, I highly recommend The Anxious Generation by Jonathan Haidt. He explains in that book how technology has transformed the world since 2007 and the introduction of the smartphone. And all the issues and problems that our young people are having today, all can be explained through the introduction of technology in our lives. Change childhood, change parenting, change the way we interact with each other, change our social interactions, change everything.
Thank you very much again, Cardinal Chewy, and thank you to the viewers. We urge you to tune in again next week. We close by saying, up, you mighty race, you can accomplish what you will.
What time is it? It's nation time.